Hello and welcome to the Business Career College Continuing Education series of videos. Today we're going to be looking at privacy legislation in Canada, what privacy legislation is, and how you can best follow that. My name is Colin Johnson. I'm Director of Operations at Business Career College. I have a background in operations management as well as human resources management. Both of these are areas where I've had ample opportunity to learn about and apply privacy legislation, both with Business Career College and outside of my role here. I look forward to sharing some of my experience of what I've learned about privacy legislation, as well as some helpful tips in applying privacy legislation to your work as well. As we progress through the course today, we're going to look at four key areas. So we're going to look at what privacy rules are out there, and we're going to take an intense view of each of the areas that we focus on so that you can have a full understanding of this. And then we're going to provide you with additional resources so you can look further into those pieces of legislation as well if you see fit and want to learn more about them. Once we've built up that basic understanding of what privacy rules are out there, we're going to talk about how those rules will impact you, your company, the company you work for, and how you can establish some best practices to manage client privacy under that specific legislation. When we say best practices, really, it's just looking at some simple do's and don'ts for privacy management so that you can avoid any complications that might be out there. Once we've looked at each of the areas in privacy legislation, we're going to move on to some talk about why it's important to follow those rules. So we're going to look at one, legal compliance. We're also going to look at what some of the financial implications of following those rules are, and then we're going to round that out with what I think is the most important reason for applying and adhering to this legislation, and that's the customer service aspect of it. The four main areas that we're going to focus on today are the Privacy Act, the Personal Information and Protection of Electronic Documents Act, Canada's anti-spam legislation, and then sector-specific laws. So the Privacy Act is a federal act. We're going to talk briefly about that and how it might apply to you. And we're also going to talk about its provincial equivalents. The piece of legislation we're going to spend the most time talking about today will probably be the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, or PIPEDA. And then we're going to spend some time focusing on its provincial equivalents and letting you know where you can get more information about those. The second biggest piece of today's presentation is going to be Canada's anti-spam legislation. Now, while that isn't specifically a privacy law per se, there are a lot of the same issues contained in how to follow Canada's anti-spam legislation as we would focus on in the other areas, so it made sense for us to put this all in one place. And we're going to round the four areas that we're focusing on out with sector-specific laws. Now, there are a lot of sector-specific laws out there. We're going to talk about a few examples of the laws that are out there and talk about how they would apply as well. But we're obviously not going to talk about every law out there. So again, we'll point you to some resources that you can focus on to get more information there. I do hope that we can have a productive day today where you learn a lot of useful information that you can apply, as I say, in your everyday life, not in a way that becomes onerous, but hopefully in a way or some various ways that simplify everything for you and make it easy for you to comply with legislation. And we do hope you come up with a strong understanding of why legislation is so important to you as a professional in the insurance and financial services industry.